Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, I may curse during this episode, but I won't be the only one. The following episode of the Politicrat contains sounds of gunshots and also contains a few choice words. Listener discretion is advised.
To look around the United States today is enough to make prophets and angels weep. This is not the land of the free. It is only very unwillingly and sporadically the home of the brave.
My heart aches today, and I think all of ours does, as Coloradans, as Americans, for this senseless tragedy, the loss of life, as we hear those names. Everybody, and Boulder County is a small community. We're all looking over the list. Do we know anybody? I'm sure that we know people that know people, people of all ages, and people who started their day with a cup of coffee and reading the morning paper, or perhaps getting their kids ready and putting on a winter coat to go out. Maybe they were making last-minute spring break plans, but none of them expected that this would be their last day here on the planet. It's a simple run for milk and eggs, getting ready to shop, going in a regular way we all live our lives, something that we can all identify with, led to a complete tragedy here today. And our hearts ache for those who lost their lives, for their families, for the survivors left behind, for the survivors who were able to get out, who have scars that can't be seen but are every bit as painful.
Fuck thoughts and prayers. Fuck 'em. Thoughts and prayers. In these situations mean absolutely emptiness. That was Colorado Governor Jared Polis earlier today in Boulder, Colorado, where there was yet another terrorist attack. Because that's what these mass shootings are. Terrorist attacks. White men, white male terrorists committing acts of terrorism on American soil on a near daily basis. Some of them get news headlines, some of them do not. I guess it depends on the number of people that they successfully kill. Then the media will amplify it, make the national news. You heard before the governor of Colorado the voice of Samuel L. Jackson, who was rendering his portrayal of James Baldwin in the excellent documentary, I Am Not Your Negro. And what you heard Samuel L. Jackson saying there to start this portion of this episode of the Politicrat Daily Podcast is exactly what James Baldwin wrote in 1979 for his unfinished memoir, Remember This House. We are not the land of the free or the home of the brave. And I really think it is time that we start owning up to that truth. And as I've said on numerous episodes, including very recently indeed, we have to start looking at this country, looking at ourselves, and we have to start confronting the history of the country and try not only to change where we're going, but compensate those that this country has committed acts of genocide and enslavement against. I'm going to get later on into this episode about how one city in the United States apparently is doing that. I'm sure they didn't listen to me here yesterday or the day before talking about reparations, but I'm going to mention a story about this that I came across. But the most predominant focus of this episode is what we're seeing here in this country and what we've seen in this country for hundreds of years. We are trapped. And what you heard the governor of Colorado say there a few minutes ago is what any governor in the United States of America could, has, or should be expected to say. If you close your eyes and listen again to that clip that I played you of Governor Jared Polis, it could have come from the mouth of any governor in these United States. It literally could have been any governor. It could have been any mayor. It could have been any council person. The words are interchangeable. I'm not so sure I even remember him saying the words thoughts or prayers in that clip. I think what I'm getting at here is how robotic all of this sounds. And not necessarily what you heard the governor of Colorado say there in that clip, but how robotic it all is overall. 10 people massacred by a white male gunman, terrorist, led away in handcuffs. He's not killed like Elijah McClain was. A guy who was a black man who was, I believe, either autistic or had some kind of other challenge in his life, who had his hands up, who wasn't doing anything. Elijah McClain was in Colorado. He was murdered by the police. Murdered. He didn't kill anybody. Didn't kill anybody. He didn't kill anybody. He even apologized before he was murdered by police in the same state. In fact, it wasn't even that far away from where this terrorist attack happened. But yesterday, a white man bleeding from one of his legs could be seen in full view of the camera. Topless, bloody, let out by 3 or 4 police officers in handcuffs. I wonder if they bought him some Burger King. He had just killed 10 people. Nobody killed him. I'm not calling for people to kill him. What strikes me as very interesting, dear listener, is that with all of the killing that white men in this country are doing, all of the terrorist attacks, be it January 6th, be it last week, a week ago today, in the Atlanta area in Georgia, be it yesterday in Boulder, Colorado, be it at any given terrorist attack in this country involving guns, because that's what this is. They don't want to hear about being so definitional. Oh, it's got to be because of an ideology. No, these are acts of terror, and they are terrorist. And isn't it interesting that no one, for all the actual killing and murder that white men are doing in this United States, in this country, and not just in this calendar year, but in any given calendar year since before the 1700s, before it became the US of A. Do you know there isn't any hate crimes perpetuated or perpetrated on white men who do this? Or on white men in general? Now, certainly there are hate crimes against white gay men. What I am talking about is, where is this rash of violent acts against white men as a group? Hell, they're the ones doing the killings. The vast majority of them. They're the ones committing the violence with the guns. Yes, of course, there are black men who do this too, and there are Latinos who do this too, and there are Asians who do this too. There are communities all over the country daily that go through gun violence losses. They do not get full-scale press conferences or attention. But what I am saying, and I say this because I really want to know, why is it? And again, I am not calling for any violence against white men, and I don't approve of it. I completely condemn it. I am simply saying that with all of the killing being done in the country, how come nobody is randomly attacking white men on the street? Why isn't that happening? And why is it that Asians, who aren't doing killing at all, who are doing very little of it on a daily basis in this country, who are just minding their own business, are being attacked and killed all across this country called the US of A? Why is that happening? You've got 75-year-old, 85-year-old, any year-old Asian individuals being randomly attacked on the streets of San Francisco, California, right here. It happens at least 4 or 5 times a day. And it has been going on for years. Years. Decades. Centuries. Across this country. People are minding their business. I'm going to play you some audio where you're going to hear the reaction to a violent attack. You're not going to get to hear the actual attack, but you are going to hear the reaction from people who are looking at it, witnessing it from an office building here in San Francisco, California. You know, the place where most people who've never been here before think is so liberal and so progressive and so open and tolerant. All these words mean nothing when you come here and you get to see, if you live here after a certain few months, just how hostile some of the people in this city are and can be. There is a veneer of tranquility and openness, a veneer of it. But just like the rest of the country, San Francisco is trapped in the lie of what James Baldwin calls its pretended humanism. Because it is a lie. It's a lie in San Francisco. It's a lie in Los Angeles. It's a lie in New York City. It's a lie in Chicago. It's a lie in Miami. It's a lie in Cheyenne. It's a lie in El Paso. It's a lie in Boston. It's a lie in Oklahoma. It's a lie in Tucson. It's a lie in Boulder. It's a lie in Atlanta. We are living a lie. We're living a lie. As you heard James Baldwin say in the audio that I played just a few minutes ago, we are not the land of the free. We are only sporadically and unwillingly the home of the brave. The following segment of the Politicrat Daily Podcast contains language that some listeners may find to be objectionable, and descriptions that may be disturbing to some. Listener discretion is advised.
What happened now? Oh my God.
What you just heard was a group of people in an office building watching from their perch on one of the upper floors on the street down below of a woman, an Asian woman, dragged by a car that she is holding on to the driver's side of as she tries to get back her handbag that had been taken from her by someone in that car, presumably the driver. This happened in San Francisco, California. And it happened in San Francisco, California on Sunday, just 2 days ago. I am not going to link to the video of it, only to say to you that you can find it, if you so are so inclined to, on my Twitter page at the Popcorn REEL. It's appalling, And I don't normally post videos like this or any others that feature violent acts. I really do want people, though, to, if they do go to the Popcorn REEL on Twitter, to see this video, having said what I just said. For about 4 or 5 seconds, the woman is being dragged, maybe 3 seconds. And she's holding on. It's like a movie. It's evil. It's just incredulous. You're looking at her holding on. And she's been taken by the car. And the car drives of her holding on to the driver's side door as she's been taken along. It's as if she's a stunt woman. And then she's dumped, she's dropped into the crosswalk and dumped there like a rag doll on a sunny Sunday afternoon in San Francisco, California. This is what San Francisco has become. This is what San Francisco in some ways has always been. It has been a lie. Just like it has this entire country that you may be living in, that I may be living in. Well, I am living in it. You may be living in it. I don't know. You may be listening to me in another part of the world. There are listeners from all over the world who do listen to this podcast. And I do thank you for listening. I do wish, of course, that this violence against women, this violence against people would not be happening. That it would have ended. That I would be talking about other important issues. But I would be a liar and a coward and a fool. And I'd be doing, I think, those of you listening, a grandiose disservice to pretend as if these events were not happening. These acts of terrorism were not happening. That violence against women was not a thing. That it was not part of the systemic cake, the patriarchy cake, that is rotten and poisonous and evil and disgusting. It's just evil. And not just evil, it is what America has been for so long. And as she is dumped, this woman, her name is Clarice, dumped in the sidewalk, in the crosswalk, she's almost hit by another car. She's almost run over by another car. And for those of you who are listening to this in San Francisco, you know that drivers here are crazy as fuck. And she could easily, Clarice, could easily have been run over. I've seen this scenario, not people getting run over, but I've seen this scenario many times in this city where you have drivers, and I'm sure it's true in your city, wherever you are on the planet, who are batshit crazy. They will drive and run over somebody and keep going. Hit and runs are not only something that happen, they are, it seems, some kind of sick rite of passage in the United States. It's a miracle that Clarice was not killed. Miracle. An absolute miracle. And by the way, she is a believer in God. Now look, I know this is apparently Atheist Day here in the United States and maybe globally. And with no disrespect at all to people who are atheists, I hope you do have a happy day today. And I hope that every day is happy for you, or at least one that doesn't bring you pain. I'm someone who believes in a higher power. I mean, I can certainly say that. Clarice happens to believe in God. And she ended up forgiving the men that drove off with her bag, her pocketbook, drove off with her literally for about 2.5 to 3 seconds before dumping her in the crosswalk. It was just horrible. Not that she forgave them, but the event of what happened to her. She had a black eye, bruising, injuries, and yet she got on TV here in San Francisco yesterday, smiled into the camera, and said that she forgave these men, these young men that did this to her, that stole her bag as well. This is a woman who was just minding her business in San Francisco, California. An Asian woman now is extremely vulnerable. And that's an Asian woman of any age. Any Asian person in the United States now, and this is not just now, this has been for 100 years plus, is extremely vulnerable. And the way the news media, locally and nationally, is reporting these attacks of terror on Asians, of violence on Asians, is irresponsible. The coverage is irresponsible. There are white people who are doing this to Asians, black people who are doing this to Asians. There was a news report last night here in San Francisco. They had these blown up pictures on one of the local news stations of a white woman flanked by 2 black men, all 3 of whom in separate incidents had been arrested for attacking Asian people. One of them had killed an Asian person. Apparently, the white woman had spat in the face and eyes of an Asian person and told that person to go back to where they. I don't care how many blow-up pictures you have of black men or white women or anyone else. All of this violence has to stop. And these white men who are doing this are out of control. And the vast majority of these attacks are being committed by white men. And I want to know, as well as with all of these other people doing this, when are these white male terrorists, when are these monsters going to be brought to heel? What we have here in the United States of America is an ISIS of white men, an ISIS of white male terrorists. That is what we have in this here country. When I return, you're going to be hearing from the President of the United States.
The Attorney General of the United States, the Director of the FBI. I've spoken with the governor, and I'll be speaking with the mayor on the aircraft. We're working very closely with the state and local law enforcement officials, and they're going to keep me updated as they learn more. You're going to ask me to speculate, understandably, you'd ask me to speculate about what happened, why it happened, and I'm not going to do that now because we don't have all the information. Not until I have all the facts. But I do know this. As president, I'm going to use all the resources at my disposal to keep the American people safe. As I said, at this moment, a great deal remains unknown. But 3 things are certain. First, 10 lives have been lost and more families have been shattered by gun violence in the state of Colorado. And Jill and I are devastated. And the feeling, I just can't imagine how the families are feeling. The victims whose futures were stolen from them, from their families, from their loved ones, who now have to struggle to go on and try to make sense of what's happened. Less than a week after the horrific murders of 8 people and the assault on the AAPI community in Georgia, while the flag was still flying half-staff for the tragedy, another American city has been scarred by gun violence and resulting trauma. And the state, that I even hate to say it because we're saying it so often, my heart goes out. Our hearts go out for the survivors, who had to flee for their lives and who hid, terrified, unsure if they would ever see their families again, their friends again. The consequences of all this are deeper than I suspect we know. By that I mean the mental consequences, the feeling of, anyway, it's just been through too many of these. The second point I want to make is my deepest thanks to the heroic police and other first responders who acted so quickly to address the situation and keep the members of their community safe. And to state the obvious, I commend the exceptional bravery of Officer Eric Talley. And I send my deepest condolences to his family, his close family and 7 children. You know, when he pinned on that badge yesterday morning, he didn't know what the day would bring. I want everybody to think about this. Every time an officer walks out of his or her home and pins that badge on, the family member that they just said goodbye to wonders whether they'll subconsciously, will they get that call? The call that his wife got. He thought he'd be coming home to his family and his 7 children. But when the moment to act came, Officer Tully did not hesitate in his duty, making the ultimate sacrifice in his effort to save lives. That's a definition of an American hero. And thirdly, I want to be very clear. This is the one thing I do know enough to say on in terms of what's happened there. While we're still waiting for more information regarding the shooter, his motive, the weapons he used, the guns, the magazines, the weapons, the modifications that apparently have taken place to those weapons that are involved here, I don't need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save the lives in the future and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to act. We can ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country once again. I got that done when I was a senator. It passed. It was law for the longest time. And it brought down these mass killings. We should do it again. We can close the loopholes in our background check system, including the Charleston loophole. That's one of the best tools we have right now to prevent gun violence. The Senate should immediately pass. Let me say it again. The United States Senate, I hope some are listening, should immediately pass the 2 House-passed bills that close loopholes in the background check system. These are bills that receive votes of both Republicans and Democrats in the House. This is not and should not be a partisan issue. This is an American issue. It will save lives, American lives, and we have to act. We should also ban assault weapons in the process. I'll have much more to say as we learn more, but I wanted to be clear. Those poor folks who died left behind families that leaves a big hole in their hearts. And we can save lives, increasing the background checks so that they're supposed to occur, and eliminating assault weapons and the size of magazines. We don't know all the detail yet on that. But I'll be talking to you more later today or in the next couple of days about what else we know. May God bless you all and those families who are mourning today because of gun violence in Colorado and Georgia, all across the country. We have to act so there's not more of you, there's fewer of you as time goes on. Thank you so much.
President Biden, today on Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2021, delivering his remarks on the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado, that occurred on Monday, March the 22nd, 2021. And President Biden touched on something that I was going to be getting into, actually, on this podcast episode, which is, of course, the Congress. Just last week, there were background check bills passed on the House floor. The waiting periods would expand. One of them was a bill where the waiting periods would expand from, I believe it was 3 days to a month, something like that, so that there could be further waiting periods and more time to do checks and a longer time to wait before being able to purchase a gun. That was passed on the House floor just last week or so, thereabouts. Just last week or maybe the week before. It was really recently. And of course, almost all the Republicans, pretty much all the Republicans voted against it. These death merchants in the Republican Party. The death merchants, that is the Republican Party. You've got these wackadoodle peddlers of death, including a Colorado congresswoman who thinks she's Sarah Palin. Guns in her Zoom background, guns in her home, guns strapped to her hip. She won't get searched. She doesn't want to be searched in the U.S. Capitol, in the magnetometer. She doesn't want to be subjected to a metal detector search. And she's strapped, packing. I'm bringing my gun into the chamber. I'm Annie friggin' Oakley. I'm Peggy Cummins in Gun Crazy. I'm frickin' strapped. That's the American mentality. That's the American way, the white American way. Because the American way before that was the Native American way. Until the genocide against them happened. White men genociding Native Americans. These United States, were founded upon violence. And we are trapped. Trapped in violence, trapped in lies, trapped in hatred, trapped in malevolence, trapped in evil, trapped in greed, trapped in miseducation and hypocrisy. I don't want to know the names of these victims. I'm sorry, that's really callous because it goes against what I've said about having the names of every single COVID-19 person who's died from that virus known and shown, faces, names. And I still stand behind that. All 535,000 plus, 540,000 plus. In fact, all of those millions around the world, we should know their names. We should have their names on news broadcasts. Their photos. But when it comes to this gun violence, and I do want to know the names of the people who died. I shouldn't be that callous. Let me backtrack. But you know who I really want to know the names of? The gun lobbyists. I want their friggin' names. I want the names of all these friggin' gun lobbyists. I want the names of all these congresspersons, these Republican congresspersons, who think they're congresspersons, but are friggin', as far as I'm concerned, mercenaries. Greedy fucks. I want those people's names. I want everybody to know their names. And you know what I want you to do? Colorado, New York, Georgia, California. I want you all around the country, wherever you are, if you are a voter, and I hope you are, if you're not right now, make sure you get to be a voter. If you are meeting all the criteria of being a voter, I really hope that you do the following, that you vote out all of these Republicans. I'm not hearing enough of that on social media. We react, we're hurt, we're angry, we're outraged. I'm part of the same thing. I do the same. However, what I try to do, as much as I can, is to add, and therefore we must act, and therefore we must vote this person out or that person out, and therefore we must do this, that, or the other. We have got to add to the outrage that we express our marching orders for what we do. Because while we must express our pain and our anger and our grief, we must also supplement that with, and this is what we must do. That is so very important. We must have a plan. I keep talking here about the issues that matter to you. And I keep asking, what are those issues for you? And I keep saying that you have to write those down, identify what they are, write a sentence or two about them, and get together via Zoom, via email, via telephone, FaceTime, whatever it might be, and have a conversation with people who are like-minded and form some kind of organization or a mission statement or a group or a coalition and start talking about these issues. Have plans for what you're going to do locally, statewide, and federally in these elections so that you can have a game plan. Tell your friends and people who think the way you do and any voter, and coalesce with other organizations or just join those other organizations like Mums Demand Action, the organization founded and chaired by Shannon Watts, and who's from Colorado, by the way, who lives in Colorado, and or any of these other organizations out here that are for background checks, for gun sense laws and gun safety laws. We're not telling people about we want to take your guns away. We're telling you that we want people to be responsible with guns. We want people to, if they're purchasing guns in this country, go through the background checks that are thorough, not these loopholes. We cannot get mired in paranoia. Oh, they're coming to take our guns away. Ooh. How many administrations have you heard be reacted to by someone who says what I just mimicked? How many? It doesn't matter which Democratic presidential administration, which Democratic state house, which Democratic mayor. There's always going to be, and always has been, this lie, this paranoia from someone who is Republican or who is just a gun freak, lying to themselves and to you, saying, oh, they're going to take our guns away. Ooh, they're going to take our guns away. Ooh, they're going to... It's just garbage. It's a line. It's a line that is used to scare and fearmonger you. How many of these politicians, whether they're in Congress, whether they're local to you, whether they're in the state houses, have their pockets filled with money from the gun lobby, from the NRA? How much of that money has blood all over it? Would you say 80%, 90%, or 100%? Until a system that worships violence and bloodshed and money and greed and violence, until that system is defeated and vanquished, we are going to continue to have these terrorist attacks in America, where gun violence is the instrument of the terror that happens. And we're going to have these white men continuing to do this. These terrorists, these white terrorists, continuing to do this. We're going to continue to have gun violence in black and brown neighborhoods. Their own acts of terror. We're going to continue to have situations like this. And that includes domestic violence. We're going to continue to have it if we do not eradicate a system that worships violence, that authors violence, that is violent. We're going to continue. It doesn't matter which administration, it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter who's president, it doesn't matter any of that. If people in the Senate do not grow a backbone and tell these lobbyists to go and fuck off, and tell these gun manufacturers who line their pockets, and tell the gun lobbyists to go and piss off, and the NRA to go and piss off, we're going to continue to have these shootings. We're going to continue to have states that have open carry laws. Texas. Colorado may even be an open carry state as well. I'm not sure. We're going to continue to have this. Continue to have people going into capitals with their guns, standing around while legislators do their business for the day. And I know Michigan has now outlawed that. People have already forgotten about January 6th, 2021, it seems. People have already forgot about what happened a week ago today. Some people have. What kind of nation are we? Huh? What kind of nation are we? Because for all I said yesterday about how there are millions of good people in the world, and there are, of course. I want to end this particular segment with this question. Is America a good nation? The suspect in the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado, has been charged with first-degree murder. That has been confirmed by Boulder, Colorado police. It's really interesting, though, that the former police officer, Derek Chauvin, was not charged with first-degree murder of George Floyd, when all of the world got to see the video and saw that for almost 9 minutes, Derek Chauvin had his knee in the neck of George Floyd, who was handcuffed. That, while Chauvin was also looking in the camera and posing, as if he was doing a photo shoot for GQ That's first-degree murder, folks. Plain and simple. Welcome back. Yes, the ignorance of the United States continues. And we're finding out, apparently, that the so-called suspect was Muslim. People have to understand something here. That Muslim is not a race, it is a faith. Number one. Number two, people pervert religion. Hence, I really hate talking about religion. And number three, by the way, and people have died, billions of people have died because of religion and fights about it between religions as well. And number three, you can be white and you can be Muslim at the same time. The shocking ignorance of the United States of America, or at least the shocking ignorance of people within the United States, because maybe they don't have a passport, because maybe they don't travel, because maybe they're not educated, because maybe they are just looking at Fox News 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Maybe because they don't read a book. Maybe because they don't know anybody who is Muslim. Maybe because they spend all their days demonizing people who are Muslim. As a Christian, I've never, ever felt the need to ever do that about anyone's religion. The Lord knows we know about some religions and what they have done to the world, what every religion has played a part in doing in this world to make it a less safe place. But people hiding behind the shield, oh, well, he's Muslim, like that somehow makes this atrocity happen more palatable? Really? Whether the guy is white, and he is. Whether the guy was black and he's not. Whether the guy was Asian and he's not. Whether the guy was Latino, Native American. I just think that the ignorance of this is deadly, poisonous, and cowardly. That someone would seek to hide behind a religion and deflect from the fact that this was done at all yesterday in Boulder, Colorado. It's just so ignorant that we completely disregard human life. It's so appalling that we do this. James Baldwin, and you just heard a clip of him at the end of that last block of this episode. We need passion. James Baldwin is correct. And it was passion that got voters out in Georgia twice in the space of roughly 3 months, if not more, because of early voting last year. It was passion. And the passion was the thing that brought the numbers. If you don't have passion, you do not have numbers to begin with. And that is a very important thing to keep in mind. As I've said about the people who have died from coronavirus, they are not just numbers. There are people behind those numbers. There are lives, there are relationships, there are memories and moments and love and ups and downs and joys and sorrows. There are a collection of things residing within those lives. There is passion, achievements, dreams, successes and failures. And so it goes with the 10 lives that were ended so violently yesterday in Colorado, and the countless other lives around the country that were ended yesterday, all across the US of A, due to gun violence or any other kind of violence or any kind of health situation. And so there is passion behind those people who voted all over the country. Passion. Passion is what fuels those numbers. Organizing. And how do the organizers do it? With passion, with conviction. And if those black women all over the country and other groups, Latinx, and Native groups, and Asian groups, did not act and get active and organize people with their passion and galvanize the people, where would we be right now? You know, in some ways, we are really pathetic. We are sometimes really pathetic, not individually, but collectively as a group, in a nation, because maybe we should be doing more than we are. And I say pathetic, and it may be extremely harsh to some ears at this moment. But any of us who have thought that this country was this great nation and continues to believe that right now is surely wandering in a pathetic minefield, a pathetic minefield of denial. You got no health care. You got no education. You got no background checks passed in the Senate. You got no right to choose that's being whittled away from you. You got no Voting Rights Act yet. It's only been passed or introduced or passed in one chamber of Congress. You got no Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. It's only been passed in one chamber of Congress. You got this immigration issue. You got this, you got that, you got the other. You got no Violence Against Women Act because that has not been passed in the Senate yet. It's pathetic, isn't it? It's pathetic. The richest nation on the earth, we're told. And look at where we're spending the money. Military, guns, militarizing the police. Elijah McClain is assassinated by the police. He did nothing. And this white guy today, revealed as a Muslim, it's the white guy. Violent white men. Violent any men. Violent white men. And these guns that proliferate every neighborhood, brought into black and brown neighborhoods. Black people don't have their own gun factories. Where are these friggin' guns coming from? Oh, Indiana. Oh, this place. Oh, that place. Who's bringing the friggin' guns in? I wonder. Is it your neighborhood, your friendly neighborhood police officers? Are they bringing the guns in? Are they the ones planting the guns on the dead black person that they have just shot dead? Is it them? The laws and the policies. Dr. King talked about militarism, racism, and poverty as the three evils of the United States and of the government. And he was killed for essentially saying that. And what he said still remains true today. Evanston, Illinois. And you may remember, dear listener, that I spoke about this within the last day or two on this podcast. And I said that we must have reparations. I said that we must have them right friggin' now. And here is the headline from the Washington Post from yesterday. Evanston, Illinois leads the country with the first reparations program for black people. It's almost as if they were listening to this episode, or at least an episode I did recently. I think it was Sunday. May have been yesterday. It's just, of course, that's not what happened. But Evanston, Illinois has approved the nation's first government reparation program for African Americans. The first reparations program. The first government reparations program for African Americans. It is a $10 million initiative. It will provide housing and mortgage assistance to address discrimination against black people. And also, there are going to be payments, I believe, of something like between $100,000 and $400,000 a year to black residents, depending on who's eligible, quote unquote. I may have those numbers wrong. But that is a Washington Post article that you should read. I'm going to see if I can link to it, if I remember. Excuse me. In the liner notes of this episode. Pardon me. And I hope that you do read it. And Evanston, Illinois is got to be only the first in the long, long, long line of redressing the atrocities and the enslavement of black people in the United States and the 500-year head start that white people have over black people. It's about time. And look at what some of the white people in this country, some of the white men in this country are doing with their 500-year head start. Just look at Boulder, Colorado, for God's sake. It's time for us to get active. It's time for us to start voting out Republicans all across the country who do not support background checks, who vote against gun safety. Colorado, you must train your eye on people like those in Congress, in the U.S. House, who are armed to the gills, who don't want to get searched in the U.S. Capitol building of all places, who bring their guns to the Capitol You've got to do this locally, all over the country, not just in Colorado. Vote out people in city governments who do not support gun safety. Vote them out. Vote out governors who do not support gun safety. Vote out senators and congresspersons who do not support gun safety. It's that simple. What I'm going to start doing on this podcast is bringing you up to date with those people who do not support gun safety in this country. I'm going to be doing it on the level of the House and the Senate. That's where I'm going to be doing this. But locally, and most importantly locally, it is up to you here in the United States to look out for that. There's ways to find your local city government. You can search around online and find it. And for those of you in my native England who are listening, we must kill the bill. Get rid of this horrible bill that extends police power. It is absolutely fascist and totalitarian. And you are beginning to see what England has quite frankly ignored for many years, is that the police are fascist. All of the black people killed in the United Kingdom, in England particularly, by police. And it is largely ignored except by the black community. And now that white women are being attacked by police at peaceful vigils, now it seems that the rest of England has begun to pay attention to how violent these police are. I do think it's time for a wake-up call for you as well. Let's get rid of that bill and challenge your member of parliament to get rid of it too. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.